Well, hello. My name is Jerry Streets. I'm the senior pastor of the Dixwell Congregational United Church of Christ in New Haven, Connecticut. Dixwell United Church of Christ is the oldest African-American congregational church founded in New Haven in 1820. As many of you know, February is Black History Month, and we all recognize that Black history is a part of American history. And we're here to celebrate that fact and to affirm that Black history is a part of American history. It is my pleasure that throughout this month of February to feature members of our congregation as a way of celebrating and affirming this Black history heritage. And so we're celebrating Black History Month by looking at the history makers of the Dixwell Avenue Congregational United Church of Christ. And my guest today is Mr. Carlton L. Highsmith, an active member of the congregation, a person with a fascinating biography, which you will learn about in just a few seconds. Welcome, Carlton.
Thank you, Reverend Streets. And again, thank you so much for including me in this project. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. So tell us a little bit about where you were born and where did you grow up?
Reverend Streets, I was born in a small town in eastern North Carolina. Whose name is Greenville, on June 13th, 1951, in a small, segregated, all-Black, four-room hospital. And I grew up in a small town not far from Greenville, about 15 miles, where I spent the first 18 years of my life, from 1951 to 1969.
Oh, what happened in 1969?
1969, I graduated from high school, an all-Black segregated high school. You know, most people don't realize, though Brown versus Board of Education happened in 1954, most school districts in the South did not obey the law. They had to be sued individually. And my school district did not get sued until 1968. They lost in 69. And so the school district was desegregated for the first time in 1970.
Wow.
My entire elementary, grammar school, high school experience was segregated. And so I graduated high school in 1969, and that's when I left Eastern North Carolina.
When you think back on your elementary through high school experience overall, how would you describe the quality of your education, even though you were in a segregated school system?
It's a very interesting question, Reverend Streets, and something I've thought a lot about, talked to a lot of people about, because as I reflect back and look back, when they shut down, when they closed all those all-Black schools throughout the South, we lost an awful lot of treasure, because we had within those schools the most incredible teachers and administrators. If you think back, reflect back, if you had a college degree in 1950, 1960, and you were Black, there were very few vocations that you could pursue. Teaching was one of them, was the top profession for those who look like me. And so the competition for jobs was immense. Mm. And my high school principal once told me that I have the most incredible pool of teachers to select from. Imagine a science major, biology major, who couldn't get a job at Ciba-Geigy, but he could get a job teaching kids chemistry.
Yeah.
Or the mathematician who couldn't get a job at NASA as an engineer could get a job teaching math to kids. And Black kids at Black schools. And that's what my principal was talking about. We had the most incredible Black educators. And I benefited from that, because what they saw in my generation, they saw that things were changing. The world was evolving. And I would have opportunities far greater than what they had. Mm-hmm. And boy, did they work us.
So in 1969 was you graduated from high school, and what happened next?
I had a most incredible high school guidance counselor who urged me to think a little bit differently than most kids who graduated from my high school. Most kids who graduated from my high school went on to an HBCU, Norfolk State, A&T. Well, you know them all. We have so many wonderful ones around the country. And my high school guidance counselor urged me to think larger, think bigger, and think farther. And she had met some people from the University of Wisconsin in Madison who were looking to recruit Black kids like me from all over the country to come to Madison to study at this monster university. And she urged me to do that. And I did. So I left my hometown in 1969 and went to Madison, Wisconsin, 1,800 miles from home.
Wow. What did you major in college?
I enrolled as an engineer at Madison because I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. I grew up in the space age when all these rockets were being launched by Gemini and Apollo, and I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And decided when I got to Madison that I didn't want to do that. So I changed my majors, as most kids do, and I ultimately got my undergraduate degree in economics. So I'm an econ major.
Oh, all right. And did you then go right into the work world after college, or did you go on to graduate school?
I took some graduate courses my final year there because I had an extra semester to finish my undergraduate degree. And while I was taking those undergraduate degrees, I took some graduate courses at Madison, thinking I was going to pursue my MBA. I ultimately finished my MBA when I got to Connecticut at a local college, University of Bridgeport. But it was while I was an undergraduate that I encountered the most incredible professor, Dr. Matthew Holden, who was a Black political scientist, one of the first African Americans to graduate from Northwestern with a PhD in political science. And one afternoon, we were talking about how do you transform communities, institutions, and power. And it was a pretty lively debate because back in those days, we had Martin Luther King, of course, we had Stokely Carmichael, we had H. Rap Brown, different philosophies on how we would transform our communities. And we had a pretty lively debate. It was mostly Black students in that class. There was 26,000 students on Wisconsin's campus. There were 400 of us who were Black. And we tried to cling together a lot. We took a lot of courses together, and Madison was one of the first campuses to really have a robust African-American studies department. And so we took advantage of a lot of courses in an African-American studies department. And Matt Holden was steering us on to debate this issue about power and transforming communities. And he let us finish our debate. And then he said something very provocative. He said that if you look back over the history of this country, communities get changed by entrepreneurs who create these incredible businesses that go on to become global empires. And he mentioned Ford, he mentioned DuPont, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and the list went on and on and on. The Johnson brothers in New Jersey, who started a drugstore that became Johnson and Johnson, Mr. Procter and Mr. Gamble in Cincinnati, who had an idea for a soap that transformed their idea into this global company. And so he talked about urging a lot of us to think about entrepreneurship and business ownership after we finish our education, because he said that's how you help to transform communities. If you could create some wealth, leverage that with other people's wealth, he said the transformational power of that is really, really significant. So I never forgot that lecture that day in that political science course. Ultimately become an entrepreneur.
I was going to say, is that what motivated you to go into the business world?
Yeah, it did. As an econ major, you take most of the courses inside of the business school. And when recruiters come to campus, they recruit from that building. And I had a chance to interact with a lot of recruiters. And I was recruited out of Wisconsin to work for a global packaging business that was headquartered in New York. with some operations in Connecticut. And that's what brought me to Connecticut in 1974.
And that experience, what our audience needs to know is that you then created your own business called Specialized Packaging. Is that a correct description?
That is a correct description. I always had that seed that Dr. Holden had planted about being an entrepreneur, but I didn't quite know how to do that. So I spent nearly a decade as a corporate executive working for Amstar Corporation. Many would know them as Domino Sugar. Domino Sugar had a monster packaging division, and I also became a marketing services manager of that division. And after doing that work for about 10 years, here again, still thinking about Dr. Holden, was when I quit my job in 1983 and opened a package design engineering business at 27 Elm Street in New Haven, Connecticut.
Now, what might our audience, how might they connect your company with their everyday life?
Very, very interesting. If you are familiar with products like Tide detergent, Gain detergent, Ivory Snow detergent, or Fresh Step cat litter, Scoop Away cat litter, Crest toothpaste, Colgate toothpaste, Ziploc freezer bags. Those are all products that my company made. We had corporate offices were in New Haven initially. We moved it to Hamden because we needed more space. But I had manufacturing facilities in Syracuse, New York, London, Ontario, Canada. I had 2 plants in Kansas City, one in Greensboro, and one large design engineering center in both Chicago and in Cincinnati.
And how long did you run the company before deciding to do something else, which you can also share if you like?
I ran the business from its inception in 1983, and in 2009, I got an offer from a very large private equity firm to buy our company, all our locations. And after some period of reflection, I decided that it was perhaps a good time to sell the business and move on to chapter 2 of my life. And
chapter 2 is what? I think one of the reasons why I want our audience to know that you are a history maker is not only because you founded the Specialized Packaging and led it successfully, but your life after that area of the business world seems to now be taking the full fruit of that seed that was planted about how entrepreneurs can be great humanitarians, which I feel that you are.
Thank you, Reverend Streets. You're absolutely right. Dr. Holden was correct. Chapter 1 had been written. I had been fortunate enough and blessed enough to have a business that grew to become quite substantial. So now, what do you do? I met Will Ginsberg at the Community Foundation and Bill Strickland from Pittsburgh. Bill Strickland is a MacArthur Genius Fellow who had the idea that you could transform the lives of poor people by surrounding them with beauty, dignity, jazz, great food, and world-class training to prepare them for jobs that exist in the community. And I went to Pittsburgh to see this model and really became endeared with it. I mean, I became really a big fan of it because I saw the logic of it and decided that we would build one of those in New Haven. And so in 2011, at 4 Science Park, we gutted a 20,000 square foot old factory building and remodeled it to become this very special place that people could come to for world-class technology training, medical coding, medical billing, phlebotomy. And so we opened that center officially in 2012. So by day, we are an adult workforce development training center. We've trained hundreds of New Haveners to become phlebotomists, medical coders, medical billers. We build a world-class teaching kitchen. So we teach culinary arts. We've trained chefs throughout New Haven. And we also, after school, have an after-school arts program and bring kids over for digital arts, performing arts, creative arts. And we have a summer academy as well for our youngsters.
And for our audience, that organization is called CONCAT, CONCAT. Is that right?
That is correct. Connecticut Center for Arts and Technology.
What's your next big project?
Well, that has started already. One of the things that happens when you start to do this kind of work, you meet some really wonderful people who are supportive and want to do more to help change life for the better for the people who live in New Haven. And one of our really large donors committed a tremendous amount of resources to us if we would extend the reach of what we were doing inside of CONCAT. And so in 2018, we created CONCORP, which is an acronym for the Connecticut Outreach and Revitalization Project, where we're actually outside of our walls doing things in the community to spur economic development amongst Black and Brown communities. As an example, we own the CONCORP Lab, located at 469 New Hallville Street in Hamden. And there we are a Black business incubator. If you have a business that's starting up and you need a place to call home, come to the lab. We have a justice fund over there where we will invest in you, provide you workshops. We collaborate with Quinnipiac University, their school of business. So if you need workshops in marketing, finance, accounting, business strategy, insurance, tax, and we provide those services at the lab. And our largest project, Reverend Streets, is the real estate development project. We've acquired the entire 7.5 acre parcel of the old Dixwell Plaza site, and we're going to be building a $200 million residential, cultural arts, entertainment district on that site, commencing later this year in 2022.
Wow. And those are exciting projects, and I can see the theme that was planted by that seed about entrepreneurship starting way back in college, as you mentioned. Would you just tell us briefly about your family?
My mom is still alive at 91 years old this year. My dad passed away nearly 35 years ago. Unfortunately, he was a 3-pack a day smoker before they realized the dangers of that habit. There are 6 of us. I'm the oldest of 6. I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters. I lost my middle sister about 9 years ago. She had asthma when she was born and never really quite became all that she could be, even though she was quite a nursing professional in the years that she lived. I have 2 daughters. Alexis, my oldest, is a lawyer. Jennifer, my youngest, is a law school administrator in a private school in Concord, North Carolina. I have 6 grandchildren. Carlton's 9, Deborah's 7, Caden's 5, and listen to this. Savannah is 4, Felicity is 4, and Mariah's 4. So for this 6-week period of time, my youngest daughter has 3 4-year-olds before Savannah turns, she's turning 5 next week.
Wow, that's wonderful. What would you say would be at least one lesson that you would share about how to succeed and live a meaningful life?
I think it starts with education, Reverend Streets, getting as much of it at the highest quality, highest level you can. It really starts there. And once you have that education, seek something that you enjoy, something that brings you fulfillment. Become good at it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But don't stop there, become better at it.
Right.
But don't stop there, become best at it. Because excellence, I see all the time where excellence always gets an opportunity. So if you can be known as being excellent in a space, you'll have opportunity, would be my advice and counsel to young folks.
What do you hope will be the legacy you leave your children and grandchildren? And it might be connected to it or may not be. Is there anything particular you would want to say to people of color, particularly African Americans, about what kind of mindset they should have if it's connected with your sense of legacy?
Mm-hmm. I think what I'd like for my grandkids and my daughters to be, I tell them this all the time, be kind. Be remembered as someone who was kind and caring, that showed empathy to everyone, no matter what their circumstance. So I think those are really important values for people to have, and I hope what people will remember me as. Generous, give of your time, your talent, and your treasure, however you can, to whomever you can, whenever you can. And it's not always about writing a check. It's about giving of yourself. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's more valuable, the time that you give it. And finally, I think it would be hopefulness. We all go through, I've gone through enormous pain and suffering and adversity, and maintaining some sense of hopefulness, I think, is also something I'd like to leave with my daughters and grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And not having it be passive hope, where you just simply sitting back and, making the pleas and, just hoping that things get better. Well, proactive hope, mm-hmm. where you do those things which are in your control to do while you're being hopeful. But just don't think that hope is going to do it, right? Mm-hmm. We've got to do things to move that along. Now, my message to Black America, see, I'm old enough to remember the first struggle. I grew up in a segregated environment. I never thought that we'd have to fight those battles again. But my message to Black America is pay attention, be aware, because they're coming. Mm. Those people who say that they are for a democracy were for that democracy when they were the majority and they control the institutions. Mm. But when it comes to a multiracial democracy, I'm not so sure they will preserve that democracy. Mm. And so there are elements, powerful elements, are eating away at our right to vote. And if they take that away from us, that will be huge. That will be significant, because now we will live under a system where they will drive, they will determine, they will dictate. So my message to Black America is that wake up, be aware, know what's going on in state legislatures all around the country where voting rights are being eaten away at, and you have a figure like our last president who can say and openly do the kinds of things that he does without consequence, mm-hmm. seemingly without consequence. That tells me that he's not the problem. The 74 million people who voted for him are a problem. So just because he goes away doesn't mean the problem goes away. So my message again to Black America, pay attention and get involved. Make sure you vote, get your relatives to vote, get your friends to vote, get actively involved, engaged in making sure our franchise is not taken away from us.
Well, is there any, anything you like to add or to say as we conclude this conversation?
Well, again, thank you so much, Reverend Streets. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I think my final closing comment would be, let's not forget to love each other.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for the history making you've done and for the history making you are continuing to do. And that's why you are representative of so many people, black and white, around the world, but definitely representative of the spirit of the members of Dixwell Church who are history makers. So thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Streets. Be well.
The month of February celebrates Black history. We know that Black history is a part of American history, and we affirm the contributions and identity of people of African descent. There are people within our congregation, the Dixwell Congregational Church in New Haven, who are truly history makers. And so in celebrating Black History Month, we feature some of the members of our congregation who are history makers. And it is my pleasure to have a conversation today with Mrs. Joan Jackson. Thank you, Mrs. Jackson, for joining me.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk with you, Reverend Streets.
Well,
This is certainly a historic month.
yes, yes. Well, let's start with, would you say a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up?
I was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1930, and I lived most of my life in New Haven and Hamden, Connecticut.
Oh. So, I'm not supposed to ask a lady her age, but you said you were born in 1930. So that makes you 90 years young.
91.
91. All right.
Yeah.
Well, God bless. So you grew up in New Haven. You went to high school in New Haven as well?
Yes, I went to Hill House High School, graduated from Hill House in 1948.
Wow.
And then I went to college in North Carolina to St. Augustine's.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll come back to that the moment you want to talk about your college experience. Do you have brothers and sisters?
No, I'm an only child.
Oh, so that means you were spoiled, huh?
That's right, all the time.
How did you decide to go away to college?
Well, Reverend Gaughan's wife talked to my mother, and she thought it would be a good thing for me to do.
Uh-huh.
And I guess somebody from St. Augustine's had got in touch with her. And between Mrs. Gaughan and my mother, I applied to St. Aug, and I went there.
Wonderful. What did you study at St. Augustine?
Sociology.
Uh-huh. And what year did you graduate from college?
I didn't graduate. I went there for 2 years. And then, of course, when you're that young, you think you're in love. So I got married.
Well, that's not a bad thing. But to go to college and spend 2 years at that time, that's quite a move.
Oh, yes, because, my parents didn't really have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they managed to scrape money together to pay my tuition. Yeah.
I see. Where are your parents from?
My mother was born in New Haven. My father was from Franklinton, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Right. And he had gone to Howard University.
Oh, he went to Howard. He's a Howard man, huh?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So after your 2 years at St. Augustine, you got married, and that's when you settled down back in New Haven?
Yes, I settled in New Haven. My husband was from Charleston, West Virginia.
Uh-huh.
And after I had 2 children, I went to nursing school.
Oh.
And became a nurse. And I worked for the Board of Education for a number of years. At that time, they had what they call community relations workers. And when children were having difficulty in school, I would go to their home and talk with their parents. And then if their parents needed help, I would try to hook them up with welfare and whatever they might need.
Sure.
So that was interesting work.
Yeah, that's very important work.
Yeah, yes. And as a nurse, I worked at Yale for many years. And then as I got older, I worked in the nursing homes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How long have you been retired from formal work?
Oh my. I retired in 2006.
Wow.
I worked until I was 75.
Oh. Who would you say have been the people that had a big influence on you in your life?
Well, certainly my father did. You know, he was a person who was always an activist. And he worked with the governor of Connecticut in the 40s and 50s to try to get more people, more Black people be hired at the stores than downtown. And I think Reverend Goins was, he was always a big influence on me. I was kind of a shy child, and he was always trying to bring me out.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, when you think about the things you've experienced, the good work you've done all these years, and where we are now in the world, what are some of your thoughts that come to mind about where things seem to be these days?
Well, we certainly have come a long way from the days when I was first married. We couldn't even find a rent. They didn't want to rent for us unless you lived in the Dixwell area, you know, or Grand Avenue. We certainly, I used to, when they were having the sit-ins in the South, and when they wouldn't serve us at the lunch counter in the Kresge store in downtown New Haven, I picketed along with a group of people. And so we have come a long way in that we certainly can do, we have much better jobs today, and we can travel and stay in hotels and things like that. I don't know what else to say about it, except we still have, to me, a long ways to go.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what did you think about the Black Lives Matter movement, the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor?
Yes. I mean, the way that we're treated by the police is shameful. And we have to keep fighting to have some better treatment of Black people, and that it not always be about, oh, this is the first, like now they're talking about going to appoint someone to the Supreme Court. We want to get past this point of when, well, oh, this is the first Black person. We want to be just be people that
Right.
because we're gifted and that we deserve the jobs.
Sure. If you could whisper into the ears of all Black Americans, all Black folks, if you can just whisper a little something in their ear, what wisdom would you want to say to them, or to us?
Well, I would say I want to see us be more unified.
Mm.
We all seem to separate ourselves into different groups. And I think they talk about white people look down on us. Lots of times we look down on each other.
Mm.
And I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That we should try to be more unified and work together.
Amen. Well, what do you think it takes to live a successful life, a meaningful life?
Well, the first thing is that you have to believe in God, and you should be involved in your church and be involved in giving some of your time to other people. You can't just think about, well, I'm going to gather up everything for myself. There's always somebody in need.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to reach out and help those people who are in need.
Yeah. What do you hope what legacy will you like to leave behind for your children and grandchildren?
Well, I've always taught. I don't know about a legacy. I talk to them. I have great grandchildren, and some of them are adults, and I talk to them about educating yourself. Some of them have gone to college, and some of them graduated summa cum laude. And I want them to reach out and help somebody else who needs help.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always about helping other people. And I think that's what I would want them to do. And then I always try to talk to them about being honest.
Yeah.
And,
So how many children do you have and grandchildren?
I have two. I have a son and a daughter, and I have 8 grandchildren, and I think I have 7 great grandchildren. I have to count them up.
I know what you mean. Well, is there anything else you like to say as we think about Black History Month and the contributions Black people have made to the world?
Well, I think we need to teach our children more about the Black history of all the Black people that not just in church and in school. They just always emphasize Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
He was certainly a great man, but there were many other Black people that did great things.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be about teaching our children those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, I want to say thank you. You are one of the history makers who is a member of Dixwell Church, and thank you for all that you do and sharing your insights with us today.
All right. Well, I thank you for being kind enough to ask me to say a few words.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.